Picture a town so compact that it exists within a single building, not just a street, not even a neighborhood. One entire structure. The police chief lives above, while 2 floors down lies the only grocery store for 60 miles. And guess where the school is? Right there, under the same roof, with the same walls, sharing the same address. This isn't a scene from a dystopian film. This is Whittier, Alaska, where about 200 people have made their home. Now, let's delve into the hidden truths about Alaska. People flock here in pursuit of the same dream: open spaces, fresh air, and a break from the chaos of modern life. It's known as the last frontier. And yes, that dream truly exists. Unfortunately, other realities accompany it. Picture 60 mm winds cancelling your only flight for a week. Winter's long, dark stretch lasting over 2 months. Or paying $15 for a gallon of milk, if it arrives at all. Most newcomers to Alaska find themselves leaving within 2 years. It's not about the scenery, it's about the harshness. However, some choose to stay. The towns they establish to endure, they look nothing like towns you've encountered before. One town lacks any roads linking it to outside communities. Not one. Another is so positioned that you can simply stand on your porch and glimpse tomorrow. There's a town where every home is secured to jacks to prevent sinking in shifting ground. And one town where people didn't just move away, they escaped, under the cover of darkness, never to return. These aren't tourist hotspots. They're lifelines, crafted, adapted, and sometimes abandoned by those who refused to yield to the wilderness. Welcome to the Survivalist Audit. Here are 10 surprising Alaskan towns that might seem unreal to you. But every peculiar detail is a thought-out strategy, a solution, a way to survive another winter. First up is the town that has managed to fit its whole community under one roof. That's Alaska's allure. And now, we'll start pulling back the layers. Whittier is our initial stop. And if it's new to you, here's what stands out. Nearly all residents live inside one 14-story concrete building known as Begich Towers. You'll find the police department, post office, laundromat, church, and grocery store all at the same address. A tunnel connects the building directly to the school, ensuring kids stay sheltered from the elements. Before chuckling at that, check Whittier's weather. 6 continuous months of rain, followed by an equal stretch of snow. With an annual rainfall averaging 197 inches, it claims the title of the wettest city in the US. Winter winds frequently reach 80 mph. Suddenly, a school tunnel doesn't seem absurd. It appears to be the most rational solution. Begich Towers was finalized in 1957, originally serving as military barracks during the Cold War. The army exited in 1960, prompting a significant population drop. Yet, some residents chose to remain. That speaks volumes about the type of person drawn to Whittier. By land, the only access route to and from Whittier is through the Anton Anderson Memorial Tunnel, a 2.5-mile passage carved through solid rock, accommodating both vehicles and trains. It closes at night, creating complications for medical emergencies after dark. This isn't a flaw in design, it's a reality residents have learned to adapt to. One resident, Erica Thompson, succinctly stated, "For me, it's just home. Mostly, you know everyone. It's a community under one roof. We have everything we need." This isn't denial. It's a true recalibration of what normal is. And the truth is, most newcomers to Whittier either adapt or they leave. If Whittier congregated its population into one building, consider Adak, the town built by the military but left deserted. Located 1,200 miles southwest of Anchorage on the Aleutian chain, Adak once housed more than 6,000 naval and Coast Guard personnel and their families at its peak. It had a McDonald's, a bowling alley, a swimming pool, a movie theater, a roller rink, and even a college. Remarkably, a new 18 million hospital was built in 1990, just 7 years before the base permanently closed in 1997. Think about it. 18 million for a hospital, only for the Navy to pack up 7 years later. The town shrank from thousands to approximately 120 residents. And the buildings? They remained. Rows of duplexes, abandoned schools, and a McDonald's sign rusting away in the Aleutian winds. Winter storms in Adak roar with wind gusts over 120 mph, and the area witnesses 263 rainy days annually, the second highest in any inhabited U.S. location. The Navy didn't abandon Adak due to its insignificance. They left as the Cold War ended, and maintaining it no longer made sense. The infrastructure stayed behind simply because no one wanted to fund its removal. Today, Adak is home to fewer than 200 people, with most structures surrendered to nature. Overgrown paths, weathered houses, and Cold War relics eerily intact in one of the nation's most isolated corners. The audit of these two towns conveys a clear message. Whittier molded itself inward for survival, while Adak expanded outward for a mission that eventually became irrelevant. One compressed to endure, the other was forsaken. But the complexities only grow from here. Whittier evolved inward, while Adak was designed for a disappearing mission. But what transpires when the very ground beneath you becomes the adversary? Enter Central Alaska. Our third stop, a tight-knit village with roughly 100 inhabitants nestled deep in the interior, about 130 miles northeast of Fairbanks, reachable solely by the Stees Highway. The first thing to grasp about interior Alaska is this. Temperatures can be extreme. The coldest recorded temperature in Central was a bone-chilling negative 69 degrees Fahrenheit, while the hottest reached a sweltering 92 degrees in June. That's a staggering 160-degree variation between the winter's coldest day and the summer's warmest, all within the same town, zip code, and front yard. Nothing else in the contiguous United States comes close to that temperature range. This isn't just trivia. It has severe implications. Roads buckle, pipes burst, foundations shift and crack. Approximately 85% of Alaska lies atop permafrost, ground that remains frozen beneath the surface year-round, and building upon it without precision can lead to structures gradually sinking into the earth. In Central, constructing a house isn't a mere project, it's engineering. Buildings in permafrost zones are often elevated on pilings to prevent heat from the structure transferring downwards. Water and sewer pipes are positioned above ground, not underground. Admittedly, it may look unusual, homes raised on stilts above the frozen terrain. Yet every inch of this design is thoughtful. If your cozy living area heats up the permafrost beneath, the ground can turn to slush, leaving your house precariously tilting. This situation isn't theoretical. One Alaskan woman, who built her cabin years back, now regularly raises her foundation when it begins to dip. "If I have water on the counter," she remarked, "it rolls this way. Oh yeah, it's sinking again." In Central, checking one's floor level becomes as routine as checking the weather in cities. It's just part of life. Now, let's explore how the permafrost issue reaches an extreme. Travel further north, 500 miles beyond Fairbanks, past the Arctic Circle, to the very top of the continent. and you'll find Utqiagvik. This community represents the northernmost point in North America, sitting a staggering 330 miles above the Arctic Circle, with a population slightly under 5,000. Previously known as Barrow, this name was altered in 2016 when residents opted to return to the original Inupiat name. Every November, darkness descends upon Utqiagvik, with no sunlight returning for around 65 days. Not just cloudy days, but a complete absence of sun. During this phase, temperatures consistently drop below zero, and the average high barely reaches -1 degree Fahrenheit. For over 2 months, the town relies entirely on artificial light, willpower, and a rich cultural tapestry refined over 1,000 years. What the audit keeps discovering about Utqiagvik is this: it's not a fight against the elements. Archaeological finds indicate a Inupiat presence dating back to at least 500 AD. These people have been formulating solutions for this environment long before many European nations came to be. Most buildings in Utqiagvik come equipped with artificial UV lights to help residents endure the lack of sunlight. The polar night carries profound cultural significance. The Inupiat traditionally utilize this time for storytelling, crafts, and gathering. The darkness isn't merely an inconvenience. It has its own rhythm, season, and ceremonies. When January arrives and the sun finally returns, albeit for less than an hour, the community celebrates. The tribal college puts on a welcome back sun dance filled with singers and drummers sharing traditional songs. The audit in this section is unmistakable. Central and Utqiagvik aren't at odds with their environment. They've struck a balance. Every house on stilts, each UV light, and every piling anchored in frozen ground, these aren't merely workarounds. They are the architecture of continuing life. The next 2 towns take an alternate route entirely. They decided to position themselves on the geographical fringes. Central and Utqiagvik highlighted the cost of persistence when the earth and sky work against you. This next segment differs. These towns built their entire identities around living at the limits. Behold number 5, Haida. Technically part of the United States, though you wouldn't guess it at first glance. The sole road leading into Haida comes from Stewart, British Columbia. No roads connect it to any other Alaskan locality, none. The AMHS ferry that once linked Haida to Ketchikan ceased operations back in the 1990s. Today, direct public transport between Haida and Alaska involves a float plane landing twice weekly with US mail. So what is life like here? Haida sources its electricity from British Columbia through BC Hydro. Additionally, it uses Canadian phone area codes instead of the Alaskan 907. If your child needs schooling and there aren't at least 10 kids in town to meet the state's teacher requirement, they cross into Canada for education. Current population, just 48 individuals. The entire town. Now, here's the baffling aspect. There is no US customs checkpoint to enter Haida. You can walk in without any identification, since once you're in Haida, there's no road leading anywhere else in Alaska. You find yourself in a geographical cul-de-sac. One resident described it succinctly. Haida is one of those delightful spots where you're both American and a second-class citizen of Canada. This isn't a complaint. It's simply what you accept when you reside here. If you ever feel curious enough to visit, while no passport is needed to step into Haida, you absolutely need one to return to Canada. People have gotten stuck for forgetting that detail. Next, let's travel to the opposite side of the state. And this one is a moment to ponder. At number 6, we have Little Diomede, a tiny island about 16 miles west of mainland Alaska, right in the Bering Strait. Its population? Approximately 80 souls. The entire island spans less than 3 square miles. No roads, no eateries, no lodging. One store provides limited food, clothing, weapons, and fuel, shipped by sea from Nome. Sitting a mere 2.4 miles away, visible on clear days, is Russia. The two Diomede Islands, separated by the international date line, means that Big Diomede, the Russian counterpart, is 21 hours ahead of Little Diomede. On a Tuesday, you can stand on your porch and gaze at Wednesday. It's not poetic, it's sheer geography. In the past, locals carved runways into the thick winter ice for bush planes to deliver supplies, medicines, and groceries. However, that practice has ceased due to climate change, which has weakened the winter ice to an unsafe degree. Now, the only means of transportation is via helicopter or boat when conditions allow. There exists a solitary heliport, the lifeline for all that reaches this island. The Inupiat community on Little Diomede is believed to have been continuously inhabited for at least 3,000 years. During the Cold War, the 2.4 miles of water connecting the islands became the Ice Curtain, a strict boundary between two nuclear powers, where families who once lived across from each other were suddenly forbidden from crossing. The conclusion of the audit here is clear. While Haida is legally American, culturally, it's Canadian. Little Diomede is mapped as American, yet it operates entirely outside the systems most Americans depend on. Both towns have carved out their existence. Both will quietly endure long after your skepticism fades. If you've followed thus far, you already recognize this is no typical Alaska narrative. We're only just beginning. One town has only 12 residents, no electricity, and no running water, named for a bird that nobody could spell. And the following town? A cat ran it for 2 decades. Subscribe to ensure you don't miss the rest of this audit, and leave a comment about which town has astonished you the most so far. I read each one. This audit has taken us through towns that compacted, engineered, and navigated their existence. This next segment differs again. These towns have chosen to exist away from the grid because they realized it wasn't coming, so they built their lives accordingly. At number 7, we find Chicken, 78 miles southeast of Tok on the Taylor Highway, nestled in Alaska's interior, one of the few surviving towns from the Gold Rush period. The 2020 census marked a population of 12. That's accurate, not a typographical error. In summer, visitors swell the numbers above 100, but when October arrives, with the closure of the Taylor Highway until spring, most venture away. Those who remain know well that the path to leave is buried under snow for months. No electricity grid exists in Chicken. Most folks rely on generators. There's no phone access or internet from within town. The only restroom in the commercial area? An outhouse. Mail arrives twice a week, on Tuesdays and Fridays. This is your connection to the outside. 2 mail deliveries weekly and the hum of a generator in darkness. The town's name holds a story of its own. Gold was discovered there in 1886, and by the late 1890s, over 700 miners were working the streams. When establishing a post office in 1902, the miners aimed to name it ptarmigan, after the bird that kept them sustained through brutal winters. Disagreement over spelling ensued, leading to the whimsical conclusion, let's just call it Chicken, and thus it became. Gold extraction still continues here. The Pedro Dredge, an enormous mining contraption, holds a place on the National Register of Historic Places, symbolizing the extent of operations that once thrived in this valley. Active mining claims persist on the nearby streams. If visiting, take heed. Chicken is the last fuel stop before crossing into Dawson City, Canada. Fill your tank before leaving, as there's nothing else available between here and the border. Then we shift to something entirely different. Nome is Talkeetna, situated about 110 miles north of Anchorage, where three rivers converge. Talkeetna has a populace of roughly 900, radiating an unusual energy. It's the base camp for climbers aiming for Denali, North America's tallest peak, rising to 20,310 feet. Each spring, serious climbers from around the globe pass through, prepping their gear for a mountain known to claim lives of experienced climbers. That's the backdrop. That's the reality of this mountain. What propelled Talkeetna into the global spotlight, however, was a cat. Stubbs, a Manx mix born without a tail, was adopted in 1997 by the manager of Nagley's General Store, a local staple since 1921. Talkeetna, being unincorporated, has no official mayor. Residents grew unimpressed with the available options and declared Stubbs the honorary mayor instead. He attracted 30 to 40 tourists daily to the store, received letters and cards, and held this position until he passed away in 2017 at the age of 20. Every afternoon, he would stroll to a nearby restaurant for water, flavored with catnip, served in a wine glass. That was his routine. The tradition lives on, with two successive cats, Aurora and Denali, assuming the honorary mayor roles following Stubbs. Denali passed away in 2022, while Aurora still holds the title at Nagley's. But what this audit reveals about Talkeetna is that while the cat garnered headlines, Denali stands as the pulse of the town's existence. Each serious mountaineering effort aimed at that peak passes through Talkeetna. The gift shops, equipment checks, and hearty meals before heading to base camp. It all unfolds here. The cat captured the media's attention, but the mountain drives the local economy. The final two towns wrap up this audit, with one serving as a cautionary tale. Every town highlighted so far has a rationale behind its oddities: survival, geography, defiance, or sheer will. This last chapter transforms peculiarities into something heavy and serious. At number 9 is Portlock, a former cannery village, once positioned on the southern edge of the Kenai Peninsula, about 16 miles south of Seldovia, and reachable solely by boat or floatplane. Established in the early 1900s, it flourished enough to warrant a post office in 1921, populated mainly by Russian Aleuts working in the salmon canneries. By 1950, the post office shuttered. The last resident departed, and nobody returned. Official narratives tell us, once Alaska Route 1 was built, communities across the Kenai Peninsula, interconnected to the mainland network, became more viable living options. Portlock was simply cut off from progress. Most former residents moved to adjacent villages like Nanwalek and Port Graham, where their descendants remain today. Yet, the other story, the one that has lingered closely behind Portlock for decades, is a darker one. Local law, particularly narratives compiled in the 2000s, describes disappearances and deaths occurring in the encompassing wilderness during the 1930s and 1940s, bodies found bearing wounds inconsistent with bear attacks, hunters who went missing without a trace. These accounts reference a creature from Dena'ina folklore known as the Nantinak, roughly interpreted as those who steal people. Melania Kell, born in Portlock in 1934, recounted to the Homer Tribune, "We abandoned our homes and school, starting anew elsewhere." She claimed something had haunted the town for extended periods. Wikipedia mentions these tales emerged after the town's abandonment, later deemed fabricated. Other previous residents have directly stated that people simply sought better jobs and educational opportunities, nothing more. So, what truly transpired in Portlock? The audit offers an honest conclusion. The legitimate facts lean towards economics and road access issues. Meanwhile, the oral history points to fear. Portlock's unsettling truth lies in the coexistence of both narratives, a dying town in a location that had begun to feel off-kilter. No one resides there now. The land is privately owned by the village of Nunwalek. If you're considering a visit, permission is required, and most who ventured there describe a profound silence as if the place has been abandoned in haste. The audit concludes back where Alaska itself finds its roots. At number 10, we find Nome. Situated 539 miles northwest of Anchorage, on the Seward Peninsula's southern coast, gazing out over the Bering Sea. No roads connect Nome to the remainder of Alaska. Not a gravel route, nor a seasonal path, nothing. You either fly in or miss out. Current population, around 3,700. In 1899, Nome's inhabitants skyrocketed from a few to 28,000 almost overnight after 3 Swedish miners struck gold on Anvil Creek. Within months, tents sprawled for 30 miles along the beach. Wyatt Earp operated a saloon on Front Street. Gold was so plentiful it was scooped straight from the sand. However, by 1910, numbers dwindled to merely 2,600 as the gold faded, gamblers departed, and Nome evolved into the place it is today. One that has resisted vanishing even after the reasons for its existence had mostly faded. In January 1925, diphtheria ravaged Nome. Temperatures plummeted below zero, rendering airplane deliveries impossible due to winter conditions. A group of 20 mushers relayed across 674 miles of frozen terrain from Nenana to Nome, carrying life-saving serum. This heroic serum run, and the dogs who facilitated it, became the inspiration behind the Iditarod, the annual 1,000-mile race from Anchorage that culminates each March on Front Street in Nome. Every year, the entire town gathers for this event. It's when the isolation shifts from feeling like a burden to embracing its essence. The concluding insights from this audit stress that in Alaska, weird is never coincidental. Each detail we've examined, from the single-building town to the permafrost pilings, from the passport-free border to the days of darkness to the off-grid generators, the cat in the general store, the forsaken village, and the roadless finish line. Everyone resulted from careful calculation. A choice to endure when departure could have been the simpler option. While many see these towns as anomalies, Alaskans recognize them as places that have chosen to persist. 10 towns, 10 unique methods of resilience. And honestly, the deeper you dive into these places, the harder it becomes to view your own city the same way. Each traffic jam, overpriced coffee, and grumbling about Wi-Fi, while Whittier residents share a tunnel with a train. Little Diomede receives 2 helicopter deliveries weekly and calls that sufficient. If this video has shifted your perspective in any way, that's precisely what this channel aims for. Subscribe and share your thoughts. Among these 10 towns, which would you consider calling home? I'm genuinely intrigued. Your answers often surprise me.